Bonjour à tous et bienvenue sur ce sommet de l'EFT dans l'éducation. Je suis Anne Ciré, à la fois votre hôtesse et l'organisatrice de ce sommet virtuel pour le compte du programme EFT en classe. Avant de présenter cette conférence, je voulais vous féliciter d'accepter de prendre la responsabilité de votre propre bien-être et celui des enfants. L'EFT, même si c'est un moyen puissant et efficace pour contribuer au bien-être physique, social et émotionnel, n'est aucunement un substitut aux soins médicaux ou traitements de santé mentale. C'est pourquoi il est conseillé que, lors de l'utilisation ou du partage de l'EFT avec d'autres personnes, vous soumettiez les cas qui sont au-delà de votre niveau de compétence à un professionnel. Cela étant dit, c'est un grand plaisir pour moi de vous présenter aujourd'hui notre intervenante et conférencière, Jondi Whitis, avec qui nous allons discuter de comment l'EFT peut s'avérer être un outil de premier secours émotionnel pour les enfants. Jondi, artiste enseignante, auteure, conférencière, certifiée maître formatrice de formateurs en EFT, accréditée par EFT International, anciennement AHAMET, Association internationale de praticiens EFT, pratique depuis des années aux États-Unis où elle réside. C'est en tant que principale formatrice en EFT pour le projet Trauma Relief Project qu'elle a pu apporter soulagement et guérison aux traumatisés de la communauté de Newton dans le Connecticut où une tragédie meurtrière avait eu lieu au sein d'une école primaire. Son dernier livre, qu'elle a écrit avec le docteur Deborah Miller, Emotional First Aid for Children, est un guide simple et pratique qui montre des techniques avant-gardistes comme l'EFT que tout parent peut appliquer et enseigner aux enfants dans le but de naviguer l'adversité facilement. Hello, bienvenue dans cette nouvelle conférence du sommet de l'EFT dans l'éducation. Aujourd'hui, nous avons le plaisir d'avoir Jondi Whitis, how you pronounce?
It's Whitis.
Whitis, okay. Welcome and thank you very much to be here on this summit. How are you going?
I am well today, thank you.
You're living in New York, in America?
Yes, I do. I've lived in New York for many decades.
And how New York is going? Fine?
New York is reopening. Everyone is has reached a critical mass, a herd immunity point, and so the city is opening up with joy.
Good. And I wanted to have you on this summit, Jondi, because you wrote a beautiful book, which is actually very useful, which called Emotional First Aid for Children. You wrote it with Deborah Miller, and she's working with children with cancer, and I hope we will have her next year on the next summit. So just let me know a bit of your background, how you find EFT on your path, and
Sure.
When did you write this book? Why? And
sure.
We listen to you.
Well, I will dance with you on that. I believe that I discovered tapping like many people do, which is accidentally and in desperation, because they have tried everything else and they say, okay, fine, I'll try anything, right? So I don't believe I was any different than that. I was searching for some solutions for my own child. I noticed that Western medicine had not found any answers that were satisfactory. And so that was part of my journey, was trying to get help for her. And along the way, I found help for her, but I also found that tapping was my thing. So tapping found me while I was looking for someone else. I've been doing it for about 20 years. I love it, obviously, or I wouldn't keep doing it. And I'll start over. It is my delight to and privilege to teach others. So I'm a master trainer of trainers with EFT International, which is a global association, and it was the first association. So I've taught for all of them, but I only teach for EFTI now. And I also sit on the board of accreditation and training. So training means a lot to me, and that includes mentoring. And that's actually what we do when we're bringing knowledge to all kinds of people who love EFT or interested in EFT. We are actually doing a kind of training and mentoring to introduce them to it in a more, I want to say, focused way. for purpose. And for today, because we're looking at the book, and thank you for saying it's a helpful book, because
Yeah,
we
it's
did
wonderful.
intend for it to be. Thank you. Deborah Miller and I started writing that. We have been friends for years,
Mm,
but we started writing this because we were concerned 3 years ago now with the amount of shootings in our country. Now, Deborah lives in Oaxaca, Mexico, but she is from the United States. And we were deeply concerned about how much this was affecting our children, both in real tragedy as well as practice for tragedy.
I
What a
just, sorry,
heartbreaker.
I had to interrupt you because we have Laurie Layden last year,
Yes,
and you worked for the shooting. Yes, you did some
that's
help.
true. Laurie and I worked on the Newtown
Mm,
trauma relief community effort,
mm,
and I was the lead trainer there.
mm,
So that was a couple of years that were very interesting. And they helped us all, I think,
mm.
looked at a more trauma-informed approach for our children. So growing out of that, all of the shootings um, caused us such duress in our heart that we thought we have to do something. And the best thing we could think of to do was write a how-to book that anyone, no matter if they've never heard about tapping
Mm,
before,
mm.
could find accessible and use, something that was so quick, so easy to teach. It would be easy for the child to remember as well as the adult. That's what we set out to make. And we had no idea that by the time we were finished and it came out from the printer, that we would be going into COVID. I was like, oh, goodness. So we just took it as a sign from above that this was a necessary thing, and we were very proud to have put it out there. Um, I'll let you get a word in edgewise, though, because I might be telling you too much information.
No, it's very interesting. And I forgot to let you know too, we have François Picard from EFT International.
Yes,
And
yes,
he told me that he knew you, and through
yes.
the training and on the board of
Hmm, right.
organizing all the training. So it's very interesting because I didn't know that, and I wanted to have you too on this summit.
Well,
So
we're all very happy to help out with this because,
mm,
everything is connected. We do believe this in the energy world, and also one another. Like you and I were chatting just a moment ago, we know each other and we kind of lift up that big picture blanketing of helpful information to all.
yeah, no. And so just let us know what finally the inside of the book, because not everyone is speaking English and it's not
Sure.
translated in French.
Well,
And
I'll have to speak with Deborah Sampson or somebody about taking care of that. I do have somebody working on a Russian version,
well,
a Slovenian version, and a Spanish version, and a Hindi version, but it's slow going because this is not what I do for a living, right? But
no,
I
but
am trying.
we could, I don't know if you have already, but we could do something to try
Yeah.
to translate
Well,
this. So
let's talk about that, because the
that's it.
object here is to teach all
Correct.
the world's children how they're designed
Mhm.
so they won't think there's something wrong with them, and
Yeah.
how to take care of themselves, because frequently no one is around to take care of them, right? And thirdly, to create problem solving children who grow up to be problem solving adults,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? So every good reason for us to put it in as many languages as possible. What I'd like to point out to people is, if you look at the book, you will find it's broken into 3
Mm,
pieces very much on purpose. This is a field guide. That's why it's this big, so you could take it in your
mm,
purse, so you could take it in your sack. Um, the first piece is the best advice we all know for ourselves. First, take care of you.
yes.
Because if you are not grounded, you will not be able to help someone else. So the first bit is about taking stock of the simple truth about what's going on with yourself,
Mm,
and then self-treating. And so the fancier your language gets, you can go into self-regulation, down-regulation, etc., etc., etc. But taking care of yourself in the moment
mm.
is step one. And we teach you how to think about that and why it's important, and then how to do that. The second part of the book is aimed at children. it's not aimed at them reading it. It's aimed at you taking care of them and training them, right? So it talks a lot more about a child's developmental phases are very different than talking to an adult.
Mm.
So you have to have a little bit of knowledge. And I think we've done a particularly good job of giving you enough, but not too much, so that your eyes roll back and you go, oh, who is this written for? It's written for the everyday person,
Yeah.
but it's deeply respectful and stands on the shoulders of much, much celebrated academics too. So there's something for everyone. And in this middle, we talk about children, we talk about how to approach them, we talk about verbal first aid as well, meaning the approach. Very important to talking to a child to match up. As Gary Craig used to always say, meet them where they are, right? And so from there, we then exercise a few different thoughts that you might want to know about the phases of troubling times. There's just before and there's during and right after, a
Mm.
little bit after, and then long after, which would be most of your clients, long after the troubling event, right? But
Mm.
it talks about the phases and how you can best use some of the tools we have adapted and collected to
Mm.
show you, but each one has its own natural phase utility.
Yeah.
So, and the third piece is about taking this delicious information out and teaching groups so that they will take it out and teach more groups and more groups. So it's about the diaspora potential,
Yeah.
if you would allow that.
Yes, and it's very well done. And I agree totally with you when you say take care of yourself first, because it's like I always in my the training I give, it's, when you are in a plane, you have to put the mask
Yes,
first
that's right.
before the kids. So
That's right.
it's exactly that. We have to do that before. And as you mentioned, it's not only I would say EFT, it's speaking about energy, everything. And that's why we're talking just before this interview. It's really related to energy. And
Yes.
like,
So we actually call that area. It's not a brand name. It's
no.
not my company's name. It is an area of pursuit, of utility, and we call it emotional first aid, because if you are an EFT tapper, you might say, oh, it's like a precursor to tapping.
Mm.
If your client shows up very upset, if your client becomes in the middle of your session very overwhelmed or triggered,
Mm.
that would be a time for emotional first aid instead of classic EFT. And everyone who knows me knows that I love classic EFT, but this is not that.
Yeah.
This is more useful in these times.
Mm.
And then later in the other phases that we talk about, it would be so useful to use EFT then.
Mm. Mm. No, it's very important, and I really like the emotional first aid for children, because it's very it's resonate, and the when you put compassion in action too,
Yes. Yes.
and
Well, many people in our business and are empathic,
yeah.
right? But it is often a troubling thing if we are caught in an empathic loop around a situation, and a lot of people who are very upset and their energies are very dysfunctional or disorienting. The empath themselves can be swamped, right? And so compassion is very different than empathy,
Yeah.
right? And so this is the word we have chosen because it's about how you take care of people, right?
Yes, and this is always a discussion I have here in Australia, because empathy, I say, you have different definition for empathy, and I say, you have compassion,
Yes.
and it's very interesting to see that everyone has a different definition for the word
Mm.
empathy, and
Yes.
like they could tell you, you are not showing empathy, or
I see. They're making a differential
yes,
there because to be empathetic means to feel with.
Yeah.
But sometimes I cannot allow myself to feel so deeply with, or I will not be able to lead them out of where they are into a more grounded, resource-based territory.
Yes, and they have another. For me, it's very strange because, I don't know if the right word in English, but when they say empathy, it's just, telling the world, oh, poor you, or I
Mhm.
understand. But sometimes
Yes.
because I'm, as I mentioned before, I'm gift and I'm very connected. I'd say, no, you can't really. You really have to try to be in the shoes on the others. It's different that just say, oh, poor you. It's okay to say poor you. You know what I
Well,
mean?
it, it is, but I do suggest that there are better things to say,
That's
right?
that's why, yeah. And that
Yeah.
compassion
And
is not so used in our
yes,
yeah, in our.
I'm sorry to hear it. Well, maybe we can change that together.
That's it. That's why I did like the title. It was and uh, and I have to say, like, just they did. I don't know if you choose the first page, but you really have everything on, like how to quickly help in times of trouble,
Yes.
and practical and easy to use trauma relief techniques, strategy, and intervention. So you just read that and say, okay, I'm taking that.
Well, I am so glad because we worked very hard thinking, my goodness,
Yeah.
we have so many words, but we were trying to appeal to different people who are going, what, trying to make a quick decision about it. But I do believe that for your audience, it's helpful to say this. These are strategies
Mm,
and they are also interventions. And that is what removes them from the idea of therapeutic counseling or
mm,
therapeutic tapping. It is really about having a strategy for when this happens. I know what to do. That would be a strategy, right? And you would deploy it. But when you deploy it in the middle of something happening, that would be the intervention
mm,
that is helpful at that time. So knowing what is helpful after you read and practice these things for yourself, then you're able to quickly act like a fireman. The fireman never has anything out of
mm,
place because they are not only they're very practiced, but they know that the autopilot is hear the bell, rise, slide, and
mm.
it's all there. And you just go boom, 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 boom. They're not thinking
Exactly.
because they know that this area is compromised when we are alarmed,
Yeah,
literally.
we
And
can't.
so it's fail safe is what they're doing, right? And so we're trying to make that analogy clear to parents and caregivers and teachers and counselors that if you too can have your boots lined up in the right order there, then
Mm.
you won't be thinking, what did she say to do? It'll just be launch, 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 launch.
Yes,
Right?
and when you turn, and that's where I like, it's how to prevent challenging events from having traumatic effects. That's what you said. Finally,
Yes,
okay, when that's done, we could think
that's right.
eventually the
That's
thing.
right. Because as you come back into a grounded state,
Mm,
my favorite word for that is I would be coming back online because so many people now use the internet for everything.
mm,
You know what it's like when suddenly you are offline. It's like being blind and thrown off and resourceless. But when you come back online, it's like, oh, I have access now to my things, right?
mm, mm,
And I think another great point for them is if you probably have this very popular doctor in all of your classes too, Dr. Siegel. And Dr. Siegel is a brain specialist, a neurologist and a brain specialist, especially for childhood things. And so he is credited with having this very childlike model of the brain being much like your arm, right? And so what I show children or parents is that that limbic system where we have all our emotions and our alarms is contained within this neocortex and prefrontal cortex, that I show them what happens when you get very upset very fast. You flip your lid. So you go offline, and they laugh because they get it. They see that. And the parents too. Yeah, I flipped my lid. And it sounds so much better when I can say to little Alice, I can say, Alice, I'm so sorry. I flipped my lid. I was really surprised. And I flipped my lid. I might have scared you. Hope not. But I'm back online now. Instead of, oh, I'm so sorry and I did this, or, well, you would have flipped your lid too. All the prevarication and the judgment and all. We don't need any of that. If we can teach them, oh, mommy, I just flipped my lid. You can go, oh, I see. I see. Let's get you back
Yeah, it's
online.
exactly what I'm showing to the
Perfect.
educators' parents. Yeah, and it's even
Perfect.
for the young adults, the one in high school or thing like that. I
Yes.
explained the same thing, like when they are in front of the page, of the exam, and
Yes.
I think
Yes.
because we don't see the between the a real danger and a false danger, it's like a danger for you, and so puff, you know
Yes.
you are sent because all your resources are allocated for your body because it's a danger. You don't have to do a math problem, so this is
Yes.
normal. You can't, everything's gone, and you just have
Yes.
to tap a bit and it's coming back and you can do again. and
That's
and
right.
that's where I totally agree with you. It makes sense for them.
Yes.
So
And it's visual,
yes,
it's tangible, and that makes it accessible.
exactly. And so did you learn, I know it's a long time finally you're doing this work, but just the fact that your intervention in Newtown and all the place, I have just to let know people that Newtown, for our audience who didn't have a look at the previous summit in Newtown, when we have Laurie Layden, it was when we have a shooting, but in a school.
Yes.
That's
Yes.
the things. So, did you learn a lot about this
I
first?
think we did. I think we did. And my theory
Mm,
is that if you're willing, you will always learn a lot from every situation. It doesn't matter what it is. And so this was no exception.
mm,
I think one of the things we learned is how difficult it could be to get past the protective barriers
mhm,
of fear, distrust, activation of the adults to be able to serve the children. And so I would say, to our chagrin, we did not get to serve as many children as we had envisioned. That
mhm,
did not come about. But why, I suppose I wanted to say what it taught us was about the barriers we would encounter anywhere, and the why for that, the explanation, and how might we go about it more intelligently now that we understood that. Because there is nothing quite like teaching an entire room full of traumatized adults.
mm.
It taught us a lot,
Yeah.
right? But what it started teaching me right then and there is that I not only needed to teach people in my training group how to respond adequately to triggering in class interventions, right? But I also needed to really investigate this area of work because there were many people who wanted to learn EFT. But the truth is, according to me, of course,
Mm.
my truth is that most of them were not ready to hear it because they were offline.
Yeah.
But it's too scary to think, I'm in charge of you. I'm in charge of a school. I'm in charge of a classroom. I'm in charge of these children. Who am I if I flip my lid? It's too scary to think that way, isn't it?
Mm.
So I offer to you, and with compassion, that I hope we were able to get closer and closer to a truth for them, which is it doesn't matter how much you know because it's not about what you know, right? Because this prefrontal cortex, this academic mind that is so nicely sculpted, is not in operation right now. So until we get you back there so that you can access everything you know, Now I am much more of the mind, let me teach you how to get back there to where you want to be. And that's what we've done.
It's, yeah, what you're saying is very powerful, because that's what I really begin to notice even with adults, because due
Mhm.
to the, the crisis with the COVID, I did some intervention in companies, and finally, okay, they has, like EFT or other stuff, but I was focusing more, I remember the last one, on the stress response,
Yes.
and I finally, I arrive at the conclusion, like, it's very important
Mhm.
to, it's exactly what you said. It's, to, they have to understand that before applying any kind of tools.
I do think that they understand it experientially the best.
Yes,
And so now when I teach people to have an experience before words, an experience then of the focused, mindful, somatic response second. Then I say, how could we choose one word for that I'm noticing right
mm,
now? And then, so you see it as a stair-stepped
mm,
kind of approach to experiential interactive learning, because I don't think they learn as well if I just bang, 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 talk words, words, words.
exactly.
Um, it's a lot of work to get to your word centers when our design is not about words, but it's about a felt sense of safety, right? And then it's about our sensory intake. And then later, it's about trying to come up with a symbol for that. And then later, I mean, I'm talking about human evolution. Later, we come to, oh, and if I wanted to tell you about that, I'd better come up with the word and then teach you what that word means. And then we have a word between us that we can communicate. Oh, okay. So it's like that.
Yeah, very
So
powerful.
human evolution in 22 minutes. Yes.
So, and just before finishing, because we try not to do too long,
Yes, yes.
as I used to say to our audience, because we are doing the subtitle, and
Mhm.
you wrote two other books, and we were talking about the first one,
Yes.
which was the detective.
Ah, the first one I feel is still a very useful desk resource for all kinds of people who help people. And that might be a parent, it might be a teacher, it might be a tapper, a trainer, it doesn't really matter. I wrote it for the tapping community, but it's absolutely useful for everybody else that I've just mentioned. And it is called How to Be a Great Detective. And it is about the art of asking useful quality questions. And there are three levels, again, another stair step, a very basic, and then a little more considered, and then a bit more complex, so that you can grow into this thing. So I left room for them to pick and choose and put it over here and then put it in their language instead of mine. Everyone doesn't have to sound like me. They should sound like them. So that was me trying to help them develop their own art of inquiry, right? So it still seems to be quite popular. So I'm happy about that. It has a flow chart in there also about what happens if it's not working, that kind of thing. And it also delivers a good bit of philosophy about questions. And should you be asking them? When do you ask them? And why do you ask them? Because they're not there for a forensic interview, right? If you've ever had somebody just pepper you with questions, you're like, wait, I don't feel comfortable, right? So it has a lot to do with really meeting them where they are and then making it accessible to them. And first, here we are again, it has to be accessible to you, right?
Yes.
So that's the first book. The second book I'm really taking out of print. It's called How to Give Great Groups. But it turned out to be a little bit expensive because my artist put too many pictures in it. But the reason I'm taking it off and then replacing it with a second edition is because it doesn't have any online section. So I've made a big push towards putting the online section in there. So it's really about the art of facilitation, right? It's about keeping people safe and giving them an interactive, experiential way to encounter how to take care of themselves.
That's wonderful. So you have been a teacher, an artist teacher?
Yes, I was a teaching artist, which is a person who typically were not sent into very good schools for a reason, because they need more, right? They need more, the other ones. But this particular foundation was a large grant holder, and they would send various kinds of artists. I was a visual artist, but they would also send perhaps dance artists or theatrical artists, literary artists. But most of us would start out by the visual arts, and we would bring that into the classroom, and then we would teach literacy by using visual art that was arresting and interesting for them. We would teach them how to write and express themselves by virtue of this thing that we showed them that they could create. And a lot of those people had never had experience with being expressive in a creative way.
So do you think that it was helpful to find
Yes.
your books, to write your books?
Yes.
That's why
Absolutely.
my question.
Well, I mean, it's very difficult to every 42 minutes be flung into another grade, another school, another wild group of children who maybe are not having the best day. And maybe when you walk in, they think they're going to have a great day, but they're so over-activated, they cannot attend. So I think that taught me a lot about facilitation.
Great. Thank you very much, Jondi. It was a pleasure to have you, and taking a bit of your time, because I'm suppose you're very busy.
I'm very pleased to do it. It's part of the mission, isn't it? So I join you in that mission. Let's all help our children feel better fast, and then show them how to do that through their whole life.
Perfect for the last words.
Thank you. I hope to see you all again.
See you, everyone.